Very interesting. Inspirational people in our lives. What are they? How can we see them? Everything. So, Angus, the stage is all yours. All right?
Thank you. So good to all. My name is Angus, and I always describe myself as an alcoholic with a bartending problem. But today I'm standing here as an educator with my educator hat on. I have to say I was doing research for this, and I wrote my first educational document, my first training program called the Temporary Martini Academy in 1997. So that's perhaps I've been educating longer than some of you have been alive. It's quite amusing. What's also quite amusing, I have to say, is watching a lot of the education that's going on here. The bar shows a lot of the time are about education, meeting new people, old friends, and also dealing with new products. It's been really funny to watch people struggle to try and use 30 minutes as a slot for education. They've taken really big, really ambitious topics and then slightly failed to get them in under 30 minutes, etc. So I'm going to try this today. I've chosen quite a short topic. I've actually practiced it, and I can do the whole thing in 45 seconds, but let's not necessarily test me on that, etc. So as I say, today we're going to be talking very much about learning and development, which I think is key to all of us, whatever level you're at. You never learn less. But more importantly, it slightly ties up some of the words and the terminology that we're using nowadays, and perhaps some words are being misused and perhaps slightly abused and setting up using things for other people. So, as I say, the session very much is teacher, trainer, coach and mentor. What's the difference and why does it matter? And I want to take you back to probably about 2001, I think it was. I went, as you can tell, I'm relatively well educated, or at least well spoken. I went to quite a nice school in Oxford called Magdalen College School, founded in 1418. So it's been going for 500 years, so they know what they're doing. And when I was there, a lot of very important, very interesting people went from there. Sam Mendes, the film director, for example, John Piper, the set director, a whole bunch of very interesting people. But when I was young, I really looked up to a guy called Guy Browning. Guy Browning, and he's in the middle there. That's Guy. I remember him as having a massive, absolute thatch of red hair, being unbelievably skinny and unbelievably pale. Always remember him as a long-distance runner. But I always liked what he did. When you're 12, 13 years, looking at people who are 17, 18 years, you can look up to them and say, okay, they're really cool people. About 10 years later, after we left, I read an article he'd written in a newspaper in the UK, and it was really interesting, quite funny, etc. And so I started doing a bit of research on him, and he'd gone from school to university, he'd become a stand-up comic for a bit. He then started working as an educator, and later on as a facilitator, and also he helped with corporate brainstorming, and what he was doing sounded really cool. So I got in touch with him, tracked him down via an email address, and sent him a message saying, you probably don't remember me, but I'd really love to sit and have a coffee with you and catch up on old times. We were 5 years different at school, we never hung out together. But I'd really like to spend some time and catch up. And he was like, yeah, sure, not a problem at all, let's do coffee. So I went along and had coffee with him, and we talked for a bit and caught up, and what had he been doing, what had I been doing. And he said, so, what are you doing with your life? Like, what are your dreams? What are your aspirations? And I said, well, what I really want to do, I want to open a hotel. He said, really, why? I said, the moment you walk through the front door, I want you to be surrounded by things that I've chosen specifically for you. I want all the rooms to be slightly different, themes slightly different, but the music, the art, books on shelves we want you to go away with, etc. Every little last detail I want to control so you're in my world. And I was talking about this, and he said, yeah, wait a time out, bullshit. I was like, what? He said, bullshit. You don't want to open a hotel. I was like, I don't. He said, no. What you like is, you like finding out and discovering things, and getting excited by them, and then sharing them with other people. And I sat there for about 30 seconds looking at him, thinking, what the fuck are you doing? We barely know one another, and you just ruined my life plan. When it made me realise that actually I didn't want to open a hotel. I didn't know anything about opening hotels, but what I did like doing was discovering and sharing it, etc. And that really set me off on my little path to be an educator. Whether I was doing it from one side of the bar to the other, standing in front of a room of people like this, it was all about sharing information and sharing knowledge. So I took it quite seriously. For those who are interested, by the way, that's me in the same year at school. If you can pick me out, and I can't show a button, but that's fine. But I did have hair in those days. As did he, so it's like, bald must be a good thing. But I have a reputation for being slightly grumpy. Some people would say a prick, but not really as many people would say a prick. They would say I'm slightly grumpy, that I don't necessarily think everything new is wonderful, and that I can sort of take offence and sometimes just get bothered by little things that happen that I think are wrong, and if we don't talk about them and stamp them out, they'll just continue to go on. So, for example, when they needed a villain this is the Spirited Awards, when they used to do videos, when they needed a villain to come and torture Simon Ford with a bottle of imitation whipped cream flavoured vodka, if I remember rightly, I was the person they chose. Actually, I'm quite a lovable, happy-go-lucky kind of person, etc. I'm a bit of an introvert, so a lot of this is just bluster. Most of the time I'm shrinking away. But more importantly, I do take things seriously. I've always taken things seriously. Bartenders are like doctors prescribing drugs. People can kill themselves on a bottle of spirits. It's their responsibility. It's our responsibility if someone has chosen to spend their time and money coming in to see us this evening. And that's a huge responsibility, and I take it seriously. In educating people, making sure that they're getting all the information, they understand the information, they can apply the information is really serious to me. So as I say, I get occasionally stroppy about things, but only because I care too much. But the thing that really inspired me to do this talk was this post. This is from Daniel Nevsky. And Daniel's a friend of mine, we've talked, etc., and we talked directly after this. He wants to do a collab with me now, which is apparently what the kids do nowadays. But more importantly, it bothered me for a bunch of reasons. Firstly, I'm not sure how many bartenders call Bacardi vodka, and whether they're very knowledgeable about rum, saying that Bacardi is very light in flavour, or whether they just don't know what Bacardi is. The idea about making Negronis equal parts, I will more than happy to argue about that. I mean, I still remember, I'm old enough to remember when the Negroni was a built cocktail as opposed to a stirred cocktail. But now we've all got our big fucking ice cubes, so we want to show them off. It's become like the old-fashioned a stirred drink, not a built drink. And the last one, leaving the vermouth out of the fridge, yeah, that's the thing. But he says these happen because some bartenders have shit mentors. Mentors don't do any of this at all. Mentor is a word for an educator, but it's not the educator who teaches you about Bacardi. It's not the educator who tells you not to put the vermouth on the back bar and put it in the fridge instead. So it really got me thinking about perhaps how some people didn't necessarily know some of these things existed. So, some of the other reasons I did this, the curse of knowledge. You may not know the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is a cognitive bias. It's the way your brain works. And when you know something, it seems inconceivable that other people don't know it. There's a very interesting test you can do, which they do, where they give someone a list of 100 songs, popular songs, that everyone would know, and a set of drumsticks. And they say, we want you to drum out the rhythm. We're going to do 100. How many do you think people are going to get? And people are like, they'll get 85. They're looking at the list, and they're like, well, these are all popular songs, everyone knows them. In fact, people get less than 10. Because in your head, when you're tapping away, it seems to make sense and sound exactly because you know what the song is. Whereas for everyone else, it's like, this guy's having some sort of epileptic fit, etc. So the curse of knowledge, that I know this, and so I assumed everybody else did as well. I can't assume, I should come back and actually say what I mean. The second thing, of course, is that bar shows a lot of the time are really aiming to show how clever the person lecturing to you is. So they pitch at a very high level. And not everybody has been to every single bar show, attended every single lecture, knows, read all the right books, etc., etc. So I wanted to do something that seemed quite basic, but at the same time I thought quite useful. Another reason I did it is because being brilliant at the basics is a philosophy that we should all have. Too many Benjamin Button bartenders nowadays exist who start off super high level and never came up through the trenches in bars that people didn't give a shit about the drink. They didn't care about who you were, what you were doing for them, etc. They just wanted to get drunk all day. And also, as I say, people have gone far beyond some of the basics. Doesn't matter. I played a lot of sports, as you can tell from my rugby picture, and every season we would start off by doing exactly the same practices and drills that we did the year before, and exactly the same practices and drills that professionals do. Because you must be brilliant at the basics to start off with. So to understand the difference between teacher, trainer, coach, and mentor is an important thing. Another thing, how you do anything is how you do everything. That post bothered me because it was a misuse of words in the same way that reading a cocktail menu that misspells a brand name bothers me. Because it's like, if you made a mistake there on something so public, then chances are you're making mistakes elsewhere, etc. So that philosophy is how you do anything is how you do everything is hugely important. And finally, that idea of doing the right thing and doing the thing right. If you're going to stand up in front and educate people, if you're going to be influential, if people are going to look up to you, you better make sure you're doing it right and you're doing it for the right reasons, etc. So that was the point of coming on today. Now, several people say, oh, I can't make the session. Could you send me the reading that you've done for this? And I could talk about, Bertrand Maslow's strategy of competence, for example. This is one of the first education models I learned. You start off, I don't know what I don't know. Later on, you know what you don't know. Later on, you know what you know, but it takes a lot of thought and effort to do it. And the last stage, unconscious competence, is you do it without thinking. Think of it as driving a car. When you're 3, 4 years old, you have no idea what a car is. It's like this magical metal box that drives around, but it's fun. Later on, you can see what your parents are doing with their arms and legs, and you know you don't know how to do it. Later on, you learn how to do it, but you have to really pay attention, check everything constantly. And finally, you get to the stage where you can drive for 100 miles and can't remember a thing that you've done the entire time because it's so autonomous. And this is important because this is about competence as a skill. This isn't about knowledge. This is, I was going to say, about doing something. Bartending is a wonderful theoretical thing with all the knowledge about mezcal and milk pack washing and all things like that, but it has got a very heavily practical component to it as well. I could also talk to you about Bloom's taxonomy of learning, which has been adapted several times, but just starts off, bottom 4 levels are the important ones. You remember, you understand, you apply, and then you can analyse. And this is hardcore educational material, etc., which you're not going to remember in half an hour. So I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm happy to share it with you later on. These are just some of the words for educators. I mean, we obviously know about teacher and coach, mentor, trainer, an instructor, professor, guru, legend, role model. These are all words that are used. They all have very specific meanings to them as well. But I obviously want to choose just 4 different words, because they're the 4 words and the 4 roles that you're likely to have experienced or potentially could do in the future. So, first off, teacher. How many people here have a teacher? How many people have a teacher now? 1 person. So the rest of you, none of you are learning anything else. It's just one of those things. It's like, right, a teacher is a meta profession. If you're a teacher, a good teacher can teach anything. I can teach you about mezcal, I can teach you about ethics and responsibilities, I can teach you whatever it is, because a teacher is a meta profession, and we like them. But a teacher is someone who helps students acquire new knowledge. That's what they do. So a teacher teaches you stuff that you didn't know, but entirely theoretical. They teach you how to read. They teach you about mezcal. They teach you about the service standards in a bar, etc. But it's all theoretical. And as I say, this is something that anybody can do and everyone should do. Even if you don't think of yourself as a teacher, you teach the people that you stand alongside with. You know, maybe a new person who just doesn't know a small fact, you hear it, and you just correct them like that. And that's important, and great training programs and great training cultures don't just happen during the onboarding. Great training happens all of the time, with people looking at someone saying, hey, they need a bit of help here, or they don't know this. I hear people trying to describe mezcal to guests, and they start talking about the agave type. And it's like, somebody who's never had mezcal before probably has no idea what an agave is anyway. So whether you're talking about roasting it in fire-learned pits, now you've lost them already. Make it simple, make it easy, make it snappy. But teaching is important, and you need certain skills for it. You need to be a good communicator. A lot of the time you're standing up in front of a room with a variety of people you have to make a connection with. You have to get across a certain amount of information, and a lot of the time that is a block of information that you know. This is what they need to know about mezcal, it's what they need to know about gin, it's what they need to know about cutting people off, licensing laws, whatever it may be. So as I say, it tends to be prescribed, you have to get that information across. You have to a certain extent, be an expert at it. There is this joke that, you know, that those who do, and those who can't teach. But a lot of the time, as I say, people can look at it and they know exactly all of this material. Robert Wise once said to me, the measure of a great trainer is not the questions that his people can answer, it's the questions they ask you can't answer. Because it shows that they've processed that information, started to understand that information. You're not just giving them the information, some of the time you're future-proofing them by giving them the analysis behind it. I can teach you about one mezcal, I can teach you about another mezcal, but if I teach you what makes mezcals different, then a new mezcal that comes onto the market, you know the right questions to ask the spirit rep with it, so that you get the right product, etc. You can have patience. Not everyone learns in the same way, not everyone learns at the same thing, and that curse of knowledge that you know this, and it's so obvious, can often trip you up, because you get impatient that people don't seem to be getting it, but that's your fault. We can talk about the understanding of learning styles, and I can talk about Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. There are 7 different intelligences, how you learn. Some people learn better by doing it, some people learn better by listening, music, jokes. There's a whole bunch of different ways that teachers can start to say, okay, this person learns visually, whereas this person learns by questioning. So I need to respond to these two people differently like that. Next, edutainment and stickability. I think it's Ian Burrell who coined the term edutainment. The idea being that he educated you, but entertained you at the same time. That's redundant. A good educator should entertain you, should engage you, whether it's the passion they have and they're explaining the way the product is, or the little tricks and the little games they use to make the information stick in your mind. This concept of stickability, which is a philosophy of how you make something stick in people's minds. Words, wordplay, slogans can be a great way of just getting across certain things. So having these, as I say, is a crucial thing to do. Roles, meta. When I say meta, it is above all professions. Just about every profession needs someone to teach them how to do it. So you get good at being a teacher and continue to practice teaching, then you can train in any corporate world there is. And I have to say, hospitality, it's not just about making cocktails, it's about making people feel better, it's about human life skills, rapport, communication, selling. I hate upselling. I refuse to ever tell my staff to upsell, but selling, the ability to convince someone to change their behaviour because of your words and actions, that's a really fucking powerful tool. And increasingly, hospitality people are being picked for other industries. And I think teaching is a great way, once you get slightly older. If you have a passion for teaching, you should go into teaching. Because as I say, the idea of affecting young minds, or even older people, can be a good thing. Anybody have a teacher at the moment? One person in the back. If you don't have a teacher, buy a newspaper and read it every day. Because you will learn shit in that newspaper, more than you will off a website, etc., etc. So, one of my tips for young bartenders, buy a newspaper, read the newspaper, cover to cover, every day. You'll have lots of information to talk to guests about, but at the same time, you will learn stuff. And a lot of the time, we stop learning, and that's when we start to feel a little bit stuck. Next, trainer. Anybody here worked with a trainer before? Anybody here is a trainer? Yeah. Trainer, when I was young, as a young bartender, nobody wanted to be head bartender, because that was just too much work on the whole. Everyone wanted to be a trainer, because it meant that the company trusted you enough to convey really important information to new people. I'm talking about the days of TGI Fridays and Planet Hollywood, and don't be rude about them, because they did an awful lot of good. To be a corporate trainer for one of these companies, they were the big dogs. They were the ones that could walk about, because they were trusted and they knew their stuff. But a trainer is someone whose job it is to teach skills. I don't train you on tequila. I teach you about tequila and train you on the margarita. So as I say, it's a big difference between teacher and trainer. A lot of people think they're the same, but trainers do physical skills. In terms of the skills they need, very similar. Communication, command of topics, understanding of learning styles. I talk about the dope slap. I say, I've been bartending for 35 years. My trainer, when he trained me at La Cantina Palenque, a Mexican restaurant in Oxford, his training style was the use of the dope slap. The dope slap is when you do something wrong, he comes up behind you and smacks you on the back of the head like that. That's apparently not allowed nowadays. But it was a very useful tool to stop you standing in the wrong place or blending something without the top on the blender. Whatever mistake I made, the dope slap sorted me right out. But nowadays, understanding learning styles, etc. I was always told as a trainer you followed a very basic model. Tell, show, test, feedback. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do before I make this drink. I'm going to make this drink and show you. I'm going to get you to do it, and I'm going to give you feedback, and then we're going to continue the process like that. So as I say, tell, show, test, feedback was almost the first bit of educational advice I was ever given. This is how you train someone how to do this. I've also been really good at physical drills. You know, if you have to test how someone's making a cocktail, to get them to do it 5 times, making it slightly different each time is good. But also role play. So I'm not talking about the fun role play, but I'm talking about the corporate role play in terms of you need to train someone how to talk to a guest. You need to train someone how to deal with a complaint. You need to train someone how to do this. So being really good at role play, going through different situations and interactions is a really important part of being a trainer. But again, if you're a creative bartender, this is just a creative outlet. Writing a great training program. First one was the Tanqueray Martini Academy. Second one was Viva Mac Way, which is all about tequila. The third one was the one I loved, which was What the Angels Left Behind, which was about Scotch whiskey. It allowed you to talk about the angel's share that was taken away. It was So as I say, it became a creative outlet for me to come up with interesting training programs. Roles for that, in-house. I mean, this is a job. Being a teacher is a job, but you can work for anybody. Being a trainer is a job. You get paid money to do this, etc. And as I say, you're the in-house trainer. It can be when you start to expand. We need to open up another venue. We're going to open up another venue. How do we ensure consistency? We send somebody who can teach people how to do what we do in the way that we want to do it, etc. Also, onboarding. The idea that when someone comes in and works for you, they're a good bartender. They've worked in many great bars elsewhere, but you now have to train them to do it in your way. So as I say, there's definitely roles to have there, whether it's in-house or to do with that expansion. Coach. Now I have to say, I was a sports person. I like hiring sports people because they're good at understanding the concept of practice, understanding teamwork. They also realise that you don't always win. You can lose. You have to get good at losing because it's going to happen, etc. And a lot of people think of coaches now very much in a sporting thing. Think of the best sporting teams, think of the best sportsmen out there. I guarantee you they will have a coach. Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Andy Murray. They all have coaches working with them individually or as a team. Very simply, a coach is someone whose job is to improve those skills. I don't teach you how to shake. I may teach you how to shake 3 cocktails at the same time. I may teach you how to do it more efficiently. I may teach you or coach you on how to get better at doing things. So coaches, I think, are some of the most important, interesting roles out there at the moment. And very similar, they are goal-focused. They are there to do something particular, to raise the revenue in the bar, to lower the wastage in the bar, to improve the profitability of this person. They're all about goals as opposed to more generic bits of information to get across there. They are multidisciplinary in terms of they're not just good bartenders, if they're coaching how to be a bartender, but they understand other elements. At Berlin, at the bar show recently, I had a friend of mine who used to be a bartender who now acts as a performance coach and sports psychologist. He works with golfers and tennis players and a whole bunch of people. Can't play tennis, can't play golf to save his life. But what he does is trying to get the mind out of the way of the body a lot of the time. Because it's the mind that fucks you up when you play good sport. You worry about stuff. Oh, it's a really big shot. His job is to get out of that. So some of the time you may be coaching someone about a physical thing they're doing wrong. Other times it may be a mental thing. So you have to have that ability to look at that. You've got to have good rapport. You've got to trust or respect the coach. If you don't, then everything they tell you is going to be slightly limited. So it's your job to find something about the person you're coaching or the team you're coaching that is similar and that you can build upon, etc. They are results driven. At the end of the day, I tend to be brought in as a coach, and I use my consultancy model for being a coach. I say, where are you now? Like, I can use tools that you may not know exist to decide where you are as a business or as an individual, whether it's stuff I can absolutely measure, like speed or accuracy, or whether it's something slightly more intangible, like levels of engagement, etc. So my consultancy model, I first come in and I measure you. The second thing I do is I set a goal. I agree with you. Where we want to improve. We're here now. Where do you want to get to? And a lot of the time it's being realistic and saying it would be great if you could make every guest spend £70 a head, but it's not going to happen. What would be more realistic? And let's break it down into smaller chunks so that we can get going with that, etc. And the last bit of consultancy or coaching is to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. It's really simple. I think consultant is an equally misused word nowadays, etc. But the idea of the consultant establishes where you are now, helps you set a goal, and then coaches you from one to the other, or consults with you to get from one to the other, is important. Now, as I say, you can coach an individual. A lot of sports people will have their own coach. Is there someone that they want to work with them constantly on time, spends a lot of time really getting to know them, and also just standing at the back and watching. Because then it gives you, coaches have perspective. They look back and they say, I've noticed that you started to drop away a little bit when you do this. I've noticed you do this. We should work on that, because that's going to become a problem if it's not addressed, etc. You can obviously do it for a team, whether it's the entire bar team or sports teams, and also corporate. I do a lot of business coaching with people to help them do better business. And you sit there and do exactly the same process, but it's significantly more lucrative. I work with some business coaches who will charge $100,000 US for 5 days work. But other people will come and say, that's fucking ridiculous. Then they say, oh, well, we used somebody who charged 20 grand for 5 days' work, and he just fucked us up. You know, he didn't do a good job, he was ambitious, but he didn't follow through on it, etc. And as I say, it is a job and a career. You can quite easily be an independent bartending coach, business coach, whatever your area of expertise is, this is a career moving forward for you, for sure. And I should say, anybody got a coach? Anybody play sport have a coach? Anybody have a business coach? I'd say everyone should have a coach. Because as I say, if you want to improve, you need someone constantly looking, watching you, measuring you, telling you how you benchmark against other people, and giving you solutions. Finally, mentor. Not a lot of people know, by the way, do you know where the word mentor comes from? Any Greeks in the room? Any readers of the Odyssey? In Homer's The Odyssey, there is a character in it, obviously Odysseus. Odysseus has a son, Telemachus. When Odysseus goes away, he leaves him in the care of his friend, an old wise man called Mentor. Later on, they talk about how Athena comes down and inhabits Mentor's body and provides good advice, etc. But this was the first time that you had perhaps an older, more experienced person being put in charge, or in some way in charge of a younger person. And it was quite relevant, being in Athens, etc., where Mentor comes from. A mentor is very simply an experienced and trusted person who gives another person advice and help. That's what it is. How many people in this room have a mentor? How many people in this room would call themselves a mentor? Interesting. I don't know why people don't tend to call themselves mentor, because it increasingly has this slightly more honorific kind of title, like a mentor is the top of the tree of education. But it's not. They're different roles. There is no top of the tree. There is no better educator. You have better teachers, better trainers, better coaches. But a mentor is totally different. And as I say, I know a lot of people that say, oh my God, I'm still my mentor. And I was like, really? Because I haven't really done anything. And other people say, oh, my bar manager was my mentor. And I was like, no, your bar manager wasn't your mentor. Your bar manager taught you things. But your bar manager, your success and his success, or her success, were linked. And I think that slightly takes away the aspect of mentor, because you have an interest in making this person do well. You know, I'm your manager, so I want you to learn all this stuff, and I want to give this advice because then you'll pick up. But then if you don't take it, I start to get a little bit screwed up. When it comes down to it, I don't think mentors can be in a direct working relationship with a mentee. I could be wrong, but at the same time, the most successful ones I've seen are someone who has that distance, who has that perspective, who can come along and look at things and say things like, bullshit, you don't want to work in a hotel. What are you talking about? You're smashing my dream, how dare you do that? You know, he listened and he was like, well, I'm really hearing not just what you've just said about the hotel, but what you've been talking about for the last 45 minutes while we've been doing coffee. It's been important. So as I say, a mentor is informal. A mentor is about experienced, trusted advisor, but not in the same way that a teacher or a coach or a trainer would be. Skills for this, experience. You have to have lived some life to pass on life advice to other people. Everything else you can learn quickly. Like bartenders nowadays are so much more knowledgeable than I ever was as a bartender. There are so many more resources out there to become an educated bartender. Videos, to become better trained, to watch how people do it, etc. But at the same time, the one thing you can't fast track is experience. And I'm not just talking about good experience, bad experience as well. But as I say, you have to have lived some life. I'm not saying all old people are mentors, and I'm not saying you have to be old to be a mentor. But it definitely works because you do start to see what actually is important in your experience, because you've lived twice as long on this earth as the other person. So experience is important. Rapport. Like, you can't have a mentor that you think is a dick. They may be massively knowledgeable, they may teach you loads of stuff, but they're still a dick. So they're not going to be a mentor to you. Time. It does take time. When I asked to see Guy Bradley, he was like, yeah, got a problem at all. Let's meet for coffee, 11 o'clock on this time. I was like, okay, that's pretty organised. Busy people are the best people that ask to be mentors because they're well organised. They always say, if you want something done, ask a busy person. Because it's true, the person who's not that busy, and 54 seconds, the person who's not that busy, as I say, is not necessarily as organised as that. Nurturing. We talk a lot about difference between managers and leaders, that's a whole different seminar, but one of the really important qualities of a leader is they're nurturing, they want to help the people around them. They don't think of themselves as the boss, take credit, etc. They want to grow the people, because they realise they're not going to be with them for all of this time, they're going to be with them for a short period of time. But during that time, if you can grow them, if you can nurture them, make them feel cared for, they will work harder. Mentors do it because they want to help the people around them. Maybe because they have an experience, a skill set, and they've learned so much and they want to share it with people, or just because, as I say, they like helping people. Vulnerable. We talked about doing well. Doing well is great. Learning from people's mistakes is massively important. So having a mentor who will tell about the times they screwed up, messed up, rather than necessarily the I did this to succeed, is really important. To have that sense of, they say the most successful people in the world fail the most, because when they fail, they don't give up. They try something different to succeed. And an awful lot of great mentors have failed, but have learned from that. And I'm more than happy to say, yeah, I fucked up badly there. And finally, listening. I was reading something the other day that said a good mentor will listen 80% of the time, 10% of the time will ask questions, and 10% of the time give advice. Because it's listening, it's hearing what people are saying, how they're saying it, what's bothering them, what's in their way, what's in their mind, what are they really saying. That's really crucial. So having that is good as well. And finally, be really good at asking questions. Consultants should be really good at asking questions as well. Why? Why does that matter? Why do you think that happens? How do you feel when that happens? What do you think you need to do? Because a coach, as we talked about before, a coach is about taking skills you already have, about skills you already have inside and making them better. What a mentor does a lot of the time is just ask you really tough questions, which they can do if they're not your manager, or if they're not your boss, or your father, and things like that. That's why that sense of distance can often be useful for it. In terms of roles, personal development, I know a lot of older people now who are very keen to sit down and have coffee and mentor people because they want to share this stuff before it comes, before they die and it's all lost, all that experience, all that knowledge, etc. Secondly, they're generally informal. I don't know many people that have the word mentor on their business card, but if I do, I think they're probably dicks. Because they're sort of claiming this sense of I'm a mentor. Some people have guru and things like that on their business card. It's just like, but as I say, you're unlikely to get paid for it. If you're being paid to mentor someone, you're really coaching them. But mentor sounds better, maybe gets you paid more and late more, I don't know. And generally, as I say, it's indirect in terms of your success should not be based on my mentoring. Like, your success should be something that can go away and be celebrated, etc., but it doesn't benefit me if you succeed. It just makes me feel like I'm a decent human being. I've done some good stuff. I'd like to finish this with two quotes, actually. One quote and something my mentor once said to me. The people closest to me determine my level of success or failure. The better they are, the better I am. If I want to go to the highest level, I can do it with only the help of other people. We have to take each other higher. We talk an awful lot in this industry at the moment about education. How important it is, how crucial it is, yet a lot of the time we don't necessarily know what those educational roles are. The last thing I'd like to do before I give you 2 minutes of questions is something that my mentor once said to me. He said, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong fucking room. And I always try to find people better than me, people who challenged me, people who were prepared to argue with me so that I could find out what they really thought, as opposed to just saying, it doesn't matter, Daniel doesn't speak English. First language, mentor, he's probably just confused. Now hopefully he's not quite as confused, because hopefully we've shown you what those 4 different roles are and why they're not necessarily better or worse, but they are definitely different. So, I will take some Q&As and thanks. My email address is up there, feel free to drop me an email. But anyway, have any questions?
We only have time for one question. All right.
Do you think that all 4 of these positions or titles tie together within the word leader, or not?
No, I don't think they do. But I think our industry is filled with managers, not very many leaders. Leaders are inspirational characters. They're about investing time in other people. They're about nurturing. They're about managing energy. Totally different skill sets. But yes, a lot of people who act as leaders can be mentors to other people because they have that sense of analysis and also the creativity that comes from increased knowledge and experience. Yeah? Folks, I will be in the back of the room after doing this, etc., but it's going to come over and hit me soon. I've got 45 seconds left, and that's all good. Thank you so very much for your time.